Hey there, hope you're doing well. In today's video, let's talk a little bit about terminologies like software terminologies or buzzwords, if you will, and also talk a bit about what the differences might be between talking the talk and walking the walk, as they say, right? So for starters, let me throw some words out there. When you hear distributed object computing, separation of concerns, microservices, what else, right? I mean, there's a number of those n-tiered architecture, design patterns. I mean, all of them make sense, right? I mean, and we all agree. I mean, that they are all good words to have in the context of software engineering. And if you Googled any of these, you're going to find hundreds of articles and really good ones as well, right? If you have read Martin Fowler's articles, I mean, it's very hard to disagree, and it's almost impossible to not learn after you've read any of those. So what's the problem, right? So we have these terminologies, we have great articles, lots of help on the web. Yet, it is not always that you see, it's not the most common thing for good software to be built. Let me rephrase that sentence, right? If you identify like 10 software systems, the percentages don't yet in 2021, at least from what I've seen, don't lean in the direction of most of them being good software. It's still a minority, right? I mean, if you take 10 systems and if you did a thorough analysis, depending on whatever your metrics are, if you find 20% of them end up being built correctly, beautifully in a manner that's sort of performance, scalable, maintainable, extensible, and yada yada yada, I feel like if you find that the number is 20%, then we should actually be quite ecstatic about it. It probably is a whole lot smaller. So what does it, I mean, why? Given all the help that's available, all the articles, all the terminologies, all the great design patterns, books and references and speakers and professors and phenomenal engineers, why is it that not a majority of the software seems to get built and it doesn't lean in that direction? I don't know if there's a solid answer, but here is my take on it, right? I think all of them make sense. All of them, you need to improve your knowledge base. You need to read a lot of stuff, try it out, implement it, get your feet dirty, hands wet, and whatnot, right? But yet, I think it's easier said than done, and here are some reasons why. Because even though we understand design patterns, enterprise design patterns, integration mechanisms, or separation of concerns, or microservices, or distributed architecture, the challenge is in taking those concepts and making them practical to the problems you're trying to solve. It's not like, enterprise design patterns or integration patterns do not necessarily mean the same thing for every problem. It could be the same design pattern, but how you take the design pattern and apply to your problem in the context of your product requirements and your deliverables and when you need to get them out the door, that's where the challenge is. That's where 99% of the challenge is. It's not like we're questioning any of these terminologies or methodologies or widely accepted ways of solving or writing software, but it's the challenge, I think, pretty much almost exclusively lies in how you take the theory and apply it and make it practical. So let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper into this, right? This is a pretty high level topic, but I figured it's worth a podcast, worth probably more than a single podcast, but let me at least give this a start. So let's say as we speak right now, we are embarking on a couple of pretty major projects at Snowpal. And by the way, if you haven't checked us out, please check us out on the web or on your mobile devices. Go to the App Store and Play Store, download our app, and then project manage your life, right? Whatever it is that you do for a living, as a hobby, as your interest, you can use our platform to make yourself more productive. Now, without going into the details of those projects, I can tell you that each of those two projects couldn't be any more different from the other. They're very different from each other, and they're reasonably different from what we already have out there in production. It's going to supplement, improve, and enhance your experience and give you a lot more features. But outside of that, they're different in their own ways. Now, as we embark on those projects, I try to think of, okay, how do we best solve this problem? Each of those problems is different from the other. So the way we're going to have to solve those problems is going to be quite different as well. They sit in different spaces, so to speak. I'm trying to make it as generic as possible, sorry, because we're in real early stages and I don't want to spill the beans. It's something really exciting and we are very confident you're going to love it. But you know, we have some ways to get there, at least for those projects. Obviously, you're going to keep seeing new features be shipped to production. I'm just talking about those two huge big ticket items. Now now let me tie that to the terminologies that I mentioned earlier. And my apologies, this video is going to be probably a reasonably lengthy one because I don't know, whatever, right? I didn't come prepared with a 5-minute script, and I never do that. It's whatever is in my thought and my memory. I'm just going to go with the flow. And I'm not known to be sussing, sorry. So let's take those terminologies. Right now I know that let's take one of those projects and let's apply these design patterns and separation of concerns and whatnot. Now, just by virtue of taking those words and my meaning by understanding a Martin Fowler article, it's not going to necessarily help me build it the best way for the problems that we are trying to solve with the money we have at hand and with the time frames we are looking at, essentially, right? So you can't let the perfect come in the way of the good. So you need to get this out there in a certain period of time. So you need to take those broad terminologies and those broad ideas on paper and try to make it more pragmatic. How can we go about doing that? Let me take almost a random example per se, right? One of the first things we need to do to kicking these off is documenting our requirements. Now, this is going to be probably more than one video because there's a lot of things and I honestly struggle to keep the scope of these videos to the necessary minimum. So there's certainly scope creep in these videos. It's because I have to blame myself for my personality in the scope creep, but beyond that, I don't necessarily come prepared to doing these videos, right? In my defense is we have other fish to fry. I was just getting out of doing some other design work when I just got to this video. I just want to take a break. So please bear with me. So one of the first things we need to do is defining the product requirements. And that's easier said than done, right? So we use GitHub for our issue management. It just works well. It's repo based. We have a number of repos in our ecosystem. So we keep it specific to that particular repository, and we have again a pattern to tie these together. Now let's take a design pattern, and this is not implementation software design pattern. This I could call it even project management design pattern or even product management design pattern, right? I had to create GitHub issues for each of these items, right? I started creating one of them and then the next one and then the third one. And these projects fall in broad categories. So the labels I need initially, like in terms of severity, we have labels like Sev 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have labels for features, enhancements, bugs, hot fixes, and etc. We have a variety of different categorization of labels on GitHub. I need to attach a set of labels to a lot of these cards. One of them is severity 1 because we need to ship the cards I'm creating initially are those items we will need to work on, complete, and push it out and release in the first release of those projects. So Sev 1 for sure, and then they're all features, no enhancements at this point because we don't even have the features out for those projects, and no bugs obviously, so they're all features. And then there are a few other labels, right, that are very specific to what we're trying to do. So I need to attach or associate those 3 or 4 labels to every single card. Now I started creating the first card, the second one, the third one, and then realization dawned upon me that there was going to be a large number of these cards. And fast forward, I think right now we have like 260 some cards, GitHub issues at this point, just for one of those projects and just for the first release. And all of them are Sev 1 items pretty much. In other words, yeah, I understand MVP, I understand going lean, but we are already in production. So everything that we ship at this point has to make sense, and they have to be meaningful additions to our services. So the current production applications are one bucket. These projects are separate buckets, right? So we need to get essentially those 260 some items out the door for it to actually set the foundation for more things to come along in those projects per se. Now, so I created 3 issues, and then I realized if I just did them in that sequence, in that order, with the number of clicks I have to do on GitHub, it would just take me several days for it to get done. And then as a small team, we have a certain window of time to solving certain types of problems. So I bucketed, I said, okay, within this session, a 4-hour session, I need to be done with each and every one of those issues. One, they need to have been created. They need to have labels. We don't need assignees at this point of time, but they need some specifics and an acceptance criteria, right? So that they needed some details. And one of the projects is very UI heavy, I'll tell you that much. So it needed screenshots, right? Markups, wireframes, and whatnot. So again, we have several ways of doing that. I typically draw them out on an iPad app, and I add an attachment essentially, right? Just to explain or illustrate what that page should kind of look like, and what the inputs and outputs should be. So, and GitHub doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe they support like copy, right? Unfortunately, and I can see why they don't, but I don't think they do. So I couldn't create an issue like a template and add multiple issues. So I had literally manually hand create each and every one of these issues, and if someone told me there is a copy, I just didn't see it, or I don't have the plan, I'm going to like kill myself. But I have a feeling where probably it doesn't support that. So I had to establish a design pattern, right? Every GitHub issue is going to have certain information, a title, some labels, a description, some screenshots, and an acceptance criteria. So how do you do this in a 4-hour window for like 200 some issues, right? And then there's also categorizations of those issues. Like we put that in a Kanban board in GitHub. So I know even within the user interface UI, some of them are UX related. Some have to do with integration with our backend services. So functional, presentational, etc., right? So there is some categorization as well. So that's also part of this design pattern. So now, we don't have like weeks to spend time on this, and we don't have like 5 people to distribute this to as well. So as I'm creating these cards, I need to associate these labels, and at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what might the implementation even sort of look like? Not the whole 9 yards, but I want to have some idea, right? If this is what the page is going to look like, or the screen is going to look like, what might be the touch points, but I did not intend to go into that level of detail in at least that first activity. So coming back to the design pattern, right? And why I'm saying that it's important that you establish a productive design pattern that's just not on paper, but it's also that pragmatic that you can implement. I created one card, and then I opened a couple of browser windows. I think it's easier to show it, but also talking and showing it is like, it's kind of multitasking. It's harder as somebody who's attempting to teach, if you will, right? Or explain what I've done. So that's why I don't have visuals when I'm doing this chat. So I opened a couple of windows, couple of tabs, sized them correctly on my desktop, and I'm copying it onto my buffer. I have a title and I need a link because I need to be able to associate these issues with each other, because if there's a page and it's got 3 pieces to it, and if I create 4 different issues, I want to make sure that they are tied together, right? And that's part of what we want to solve as well. And then we use our own product to tie multiple projects and repositories. But within a repository, I use GitHub to manage those issues because it's closer to the code, it's closer to the pull requests and whatnot, right? So the best tool for the job there. I had these multiple smaller windows open in these desktops, and I'm quickly trying to go through a list of features that we need to implement in the first release. And a lot of it is just in my mind as I'm walking through this, but some of it I draw out as well in this iPad app. So I go through, look at my diagram, I'm like, okay, this is what the first issue should be. And I'm also doing that in sequence. Now, this doesn't have to be necessarily implemented in sequence, but it wouldn't hurt if it were implemented that way, or it could at least be the starting point, right? So I'm looking at a diagram, I'm creating the GitHub issue, attaching the labels, adding the title, and cross-linking. And I have to do that for one issue. It's one issue at a time, and I have to go all the way up to like 260 something, right? And I was able to get this done in a 4-hour window, let me tell you. So I know the design pattern worked, But this is not a design pattern I've used in the past, because every project we do, either for ourselves, for our own products within the company, or for clients, it's different, right? They're all different. I mean, they all fall in this realm of, in the space of software development, but they could be full stack, UI, API, middleware, database, UI, UX, different protocols, different types of endpoints. It spans the spectrum, right? And the clients are different, and the project length is different, right? The team is different. They're located in different parts of the world. So no two projects are similar. The only thing we can take away from each project is our learning and our memories, right? Nothing more, like it or not. So anyways, with this, we are our own clients for this project, and but the project is different. The type of problem we are setting out to solve is slightly different. So I do not have a design pattern which would fit this equation. So I couldn't go to like Stack Overflow or one of our previous experiences in defining this GitHub project and copy or mimic that behavior. This is unique, and I need to give it that respect. So it takes like 3 or 4 initial issues for me to create them, to get a feel for how my approach should even be from a product management standpoint. And then after I create the first 3 or 4, I get the idea, right? This is the design pattern that's being established, right? And then you follow that design pattern. You copy the title, you copy the links, you put them in either a text edit or your notes, whatever makes sense to you. And then you copy them and you create these issues in a certain sequence. Now, if I have to change my buffer 3 times for a card, then I'm wasting time, Apple C, Apple V, and then I have to copy again and paste again. It's easier if I copy it once, create the 260 cards with the title, and then adjust the title and keep the part of the title that does not change, so I can quickly crank out those issues that are empty. And once I do that, after then associate the labels, and then I go to the description. For the description, I need I need a URL that I'm referencing for our wireframes or mockups, or something that's functional even maybe. And I have some details and description and the tag and the header that says acceptance criteria with empty bullets, right? So I copy that and I stick it into each of these issues. And then I just make the adjustments for the actual text. The third activity would be screenshots. Now I'm going to wherever the previous version is, the mockups are, the wireframes are, taking screenshots, and then just do a Apple Shift 3, the screenshot's created, and then you drag the screenshot into the GitHub comment or the description, right? And then you change the width from whatever the large size is to a more reasonable number. So that's a repeated activity. Now your brain is tuned at this point. You're doing the titles first, you're doing the labels next, you're doing the description third, and then the images 4. That's a design pattern, all right? It's not an integration design pattern. It's not like the gangs of 4 design pattern, but it's a design pattern for solving that part of the problem, which is creating issues on GitHub. And it's important to be productive there, right? Because I don't have the luxury. I don't have the luxury to spend like a week on this. I have like a 4-hour window. I need to get this done, and that's how we can churn out a lot of features, a lot of applications and different types of services for your benefit through our platform. So this video, I've only talked about GitHub and creating issues for this project. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into this, but ultimately at the end of the 4 hours, I had the GitHub issues in place. So I can now hand this over to people who will be working on implementing it, which is including myself, because I'm one of the devs as well. But I need to know that if I'm able to understand it, I'm hopeful that the other members of my team can, and we make the adjustments where we need to make these adjustments. But I ask myself these questions: hey, if I knew nothing else about this card or this issue when I was given this, does this have enough? I mean, it doesn't have to go to pages and pages and sections. As verbose as I am, and when I'm in these videos or maybe in meetings, if you've worked with me, I'm extremely succinct when it comes to code, designs, architecture, and processes, right? Because we don't have the time to be verbose there, unfortunately. So anyway, each of those issues has a screenshot or 2, in this case because it's a UI heavy project, and then it's got an acceptance criteria, right? It says what should happen. And that is basically it pretty much. As a developer, I want to see that and I want to make sense of it. Not even if I do not have to look at the other 261 issues, this one issue, the 262nd issue, should tell me enough about what I need to solve, what my inputs are going to be, what my outputs, which is the acceptance criteria, is going to be, right? So here's what I mean. If you go look up all the documentation online, there's going to be plenty of articles about how to manage, how to create this, whether you should do it on GitHub or other tools that are out there. It doesn't matter, right? Sure, there's lots of options. Which one works for you for the time, for the windows you have in mind, and whatever that is, you want to make sure you get used to it. So within the first 15-20 minutes, you get a grasp on how you want to go about solving that problem. While this is a GitHub issue, which requires 0 lines of code being written, I will take further examples in my subsequent videos and talk about how such design patterns, like what you learn online, and how you adapt that and tweak it to suit your needs is very crucial and imperative in your productivity, right? And it's going to go a long way in honing your problem solving abilities. This again is not code driven, right? It's GitHub, it's product management-ish related stuff. I will take other examples that deal with architecture, that deal with implementation, that deal with testing, that deal with project management, all of which require design patterns, right? All of which require not just reading terminologies and understanding fancy words that are online and then just throwing those words out when you're having a conversation with other team members, but actually understanding the depth of what these things actually mean in the context of the problem you're solving for the client you're working with, in the teams that you're in at that given point of time. And making sure that it is actually the best fit for what you're doing. You can't paint, take a brush and paint a broad stroke saying, hey, you know what, this is how I did my GitHub issue management for this project, for this next new UI heavy project at Snowpal. That means that's how I'm going to do for the next non-UI project at Snowpal or a UI project at some other company, right? If you did that, it's gonna bite you, right? And it's not going to help you. So hopefully, I know this is a long video, but hopefully it helps you. Hopefully it helps you at least a tiny bit. Enjoy your Saturday. It's actually quite wet and cold out there. So I'm just waiting for the rain to stop before I can get out and get some walking done. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.